You use live bait? Oh, you're a noob. How's your fish count there, Mr. Artificial? Kinda low? Don't you get bored casting to the same place every time and then just waiting for hours on end? Don't you get frustrated by constantly casting yet hardly catching a thing? Hey everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Fish for Thought. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing live bait. Fishing with live bait as opposed to artificial lures is a debate that isn't going away anytime soon. As I've mentioned in the previous vlog, fishing with live bait is your easiest path to success. Let's start with the most popular, the worm. The oldest and perhaps most effective of the live baits, the worm is the go-to bait, especially for brand new fishermen. Their slimy, wiggly, ribbed bodies and their pungent scent attract fish on multiple levels, and that is what you want out of a live bait. And quite frankly, worms are the go-to bait for little kids, which makes them universally accepted as the very first live bait most people use. Dew worms, which are the ones that are most commercially found, are the best ones to be used. Not so much the ones that you find on the sidewalk after the rain. The dew worm actually gets its name from the place or the time of day, actually more accurately, that you can catch them. Early in the morning when the first dew hits the grass is when these worms come out to feed, and this is when you can catch them. So if you are enterprising enough, wake up at that hour and walk out onto a nice dewy piece of grass. Once you're on it, you gotta be fast. Carry a flashlight so you can find them, and when you do, snatch them really fast. Once you have a hold of a dew worm though, gently ease it out of the ground, because if you try to pull too hard, you will break the worm in half. There is another kind of dew worm that people do see from time to time in live bait shops called the nitro worm. Now the nitro worm looks like dew worms identically, except that they're chartreuse, or a very bright green color. Now I've been asked many times where one can actually find nitro worms in the wild, and I'm here to tell you, nitro worms are just dew worms with food in them. Now how does one make those nitro worms? It's in the dirt. So there's a couple ways. First of all, you can buy a pack of nitro worms and then a pack of dew worms, and then once all your nitro worms are done, you can put your dew worms into the same dirt that the nitro worms were in, and those same dew worms will turn that chartreuse green. But there's an even cheaper way and more cost-effective long-term way of doing this. Now, any dirt that can be found that you can house worms in, use that, and then take 2 bottles of food coloring. Green food coloring, put 24 drops of it in, and yellow food coloring, put in 10. Mix it around in the dirt, and you actually have the food the worms need to go nitro. Put your dew worms in, wait perhaps a day, and you'll be having lots of bright green worms. Depending on the size of your worm is really what kind of hook you should use. Larger dew worms, I would go with a treble hook in order to hook the body more onto the hooks. Whereas the single hook, if you have smaller dew worms, that's what I would use. Next, I want to talk to you about my personal favorite live bait, the minnow. Now, you can use minnows to catch larger fish than worms in general, and therefore there are various different sizes of minnows that you need to use. Obviously, the smaller the minnow, the smaller the fish you wish to attract. The bigger the minnow, the bigger the fish. There are obviously various types of minnows to use in different shapes and sizes, but the only piece of advice I would provide to you is try to get minnows that are native to the body of water in which you are fishing. For an example, a northern pike sees a minnow that it sees all the time. It will strike it without thought. If it sees a minnow that it has never seen before, it may think twice because it doesn't know what it is. I don't hook them through the lip myself for a couple reasons. First of all, low strike to hook percentage. Any fish that strikes from the back will most likely not get the hook in their mouth in order to catch the fish. The second reason is that I tend to find the fish die faster when I hook them through the lip, and due to the fact that they're often dying faster, I find that the action on the minnow isn't as good. Now the second hooking technique is on the top of the fish, but closer to the back than to the middle. The action on this kind of hooking is actually phenomenal. The reason why I don't use it though is that low hit to hook ratio again, because anything that would strike from the front has a lesser chance of getting the hook in their mouth. Now the one I use is right underneath the dorsal fin, which is the fin on the top of the fish right in the middle. And the reason I do is you get the action that you do by hooking above the caudal peduncle, as well as the high hook to hit ratio, because you got that hook right in the middle of the fish So any fish that hits from both behind and in front will have the equal amount of chance of getting a hook in their mouth. Lastly, getting minnows is really easy if you get something called a minnow trap. Now, a minnow trap could be purchased at any fishing store. It's this cylindrical mesh-looking contraption which looks like their ends have been punched in and holes on each of the ends. What you do is it comes in two parts, so you'll unlatch it, throw the bread into the middle of the trap, latch it back up, and throw it into the body of water in which you would like to fish. The bread will attract the minnows, so the minnows will swim into the trap via those two holes on either end, but the trap is designed in such a way that the minnows actually can't swim out. So it doesn't generally take long to trap a bunch of minnows in these things in order to resume your fishing for the day. Now, there are some lesser used but very effective live baits that I'm going to cover quickly. The first of which is the crayfish. Now, the crayfish look like little lobsters for anyone who's never seen them before. Aren't the easiest things to catch. They often hide under rocks, they swim backwards, and they are very fast. But if you have the ability to catch a crayfish, first of all, hold it in the middle of its body. Anything near either end of it, the pincers will be able to reach you. If you're going to use it, place it on a hook and toss it out and let it sink to the bottom. Crayfish are, as an example, a favorite food of bass. However, the pincers and difficult measures of catching these things make it a very difficult live bait to come by. You generally cannot buy crayfish in bait stores to use for fishing. The next one is grubs. Now, grubs you see everywhere, these little white kind of tube-like things, look like mini worms. You could use these things. They are very effective, but generally for small fish. You often find grubs in decomposing trees or any other materials and are very, very difficult to come by. And another one of my favorites is leeches. Leeches sound very terrifying to most people in order to use for live bait because they suck your blood. Well, quite frankly, what happens is when you pick up a leech to hook it onto a hook, yes, it does suck onto your finger, but you just have to easily detach your finger. It takes quite a while for a leech to be attached to draw blood from you. So as you're hooking it, as you feel them attach, just remove your finger from the attachment and continue hooking. These are incredibly good baits specifically for smallmouth bass as they hang out around rocks. I highly recommend using these for live bait if you're not squeamish about touching leeches, and I've had great success with them in my past. Now that's the basics of live baits, at least here in southern Ontario. I would suggest placing treble hooks on most of these live baits as it increases your hit to strike ratio. However, single hooks work just fine as well. Okay guys, thanks for watching. Until next time, keep on streaming.